10 missed calls from an unknown number. It wasn't the first time Arthur had missed a call while teaching his art class. Yet this time, the notifications on his phone, the clouds of early autumn, and the noise of the students leaving the class filled Arthur with an ominous sense of loss. As he was staring unconsciously at the screen of his phone, he received an 11th call from the same number. He answered it and waited. From a wave of incomprehensible static emerged the question, "Is this Mr. Williams, Arthur?" "Yes, it's me," he answered instinctively. "We're sorry to inform you that your son died in an accident. We need you to come to the Brown City Hospital to identify the body." Without giving himself a second to process the information, he replied, "I'll be there." With trembling hands, he put his phone in his pocket and looked around him. He was alone in the classroom, with nothing but the empty paint tubes to provide him company. In a haze of disbelief, he picked up his keys and got into his car. There was no car other than his. The more he drove, the more the bounds of the road felt like they were pushing sideways, until nothing remained but the asphalt on which he was moving. Soon, he found himself already at the hospital desk, looking for directions. His body felt as if it were moving according to a will other than his. Deep down, he didn't want to go where the lady at the front desk told him he should go. He knew what awaited him there. Shortly, he found himself in front of the pathologist. He was a skinny man with long, brittle hair and thin lips. Without any introduction, he asked, "You must be Mr. Williams. Your son's body is here. Follow me." Under the coldness that emanated from the freezers and the two dark pits that were the pathologist's eyes, Arthur could only reply with a timid, "Yes." With unbothered indifference, the pathologist pulled one of the body trays and excused himself out of the room. A large white cloth was spread on the tray, with bumps that suggested there was a body under it. Arthur knew to whom the body belonged, but couldn't bring himself to believe it. For the first couple of minutes, Arthur didn't move from his place. It felt like all the light in the room disappeared and took everything with it. There was only him, the body, and a darkness that stretched to infinity. Arthur knew what should be done, yet dreaded doing it. Whenever he tried to stretch his arm to uncover the body, the darkness would get thicker. At last, full of resignation, he pulled back the white cloth, the still lifeless body of an 8-year-old. With the same hand, Arthur tried to caress the cheek of his son, hoping that the eyes that were once full of warmth would look up at him. Yet Arthur's caresses were only met with an indifference typical of the dead. While both his hands rested on the ice-cold metallic tray, Arthur could feel a stream of warmth travel from his face to his hands. The more he tried to hold that stream, the more it went against his own will. Soon, a third member joined the scene. It wasn't a person, nor an object. It came like a striking force, both sweet and rancid, and took hold of the air around him. He could taste it, smell it, and through its thickness even touch it. It was everywhere, in his nose, in his mouth, on his clothes. A cloud united his son and him, and the cloud smelt like rotten fruit drenched in a pool of ammonia. He tried to search in the corpse before him for the lost smiles of his son. The pathologist came back, stood beside Arthur, and stared at the tears on the border of the tray. "Do you smell it?" asked Arthur. "It's all one smell," replied the pathologist, and handed some papers for the father to sign. 5 years later, Arthur was sitting in his house studio, in front of him a plethora of unfinished paintings. Those rare few which he could bring himself to finish, he judged to be uninspired and flat. Whenever he picked up the brush, he could feel infinitely small spasms across his body warning him against it. Whenever he picked up the scalpel to mix colors, instead of the earthy sweetness of the oil paint, the putrid smell of the morgue would summon itself. It would take refuge in the back of his throat, making every breath feel like a punch to the lungs, and every brushstroke feel like a fall from the sky. For as long as he could remember, his art had always provided him a warmth,
that made all the weariness of routine feel pleasurable. The long hours, the countless studies, the endless back and forth from his home to his office, they all felt like strokes that made up the painting of his life. Now, a vast black circle was present in the middle of the painting, pulling the tint out of every color and pushing everything toward one unified dullness.
When he went to his painting classes, while stuck in traffic, he would often remember the day he received the news. He couldn't help but think of the empty road as one of life's cruel jokes. "Take my son and give me the clear traffic," he thought bitterly. Since the son had left the family, Arthur's wife had gotten into the habit of checking on her husband in his studio. She would always find him dozing off into the trees behind the window, with the paint dry and the painting barely started. Any attempt to get him to talk would always end in a fruitless exchange of yeses and nos. Whenever she was in the studio, it seemed to her that her husband's soul had left with the leaves, trapped with them in endless swirling. She soon realized that what stood in front of her was a body no more alive than that of her son. One late winter night, as Arthur was staring at another of his many unfinished paintings, what resembled a murmur disrupted his usual brooding. At first, he didn't give it any thought. He knew he was alone in the house, yet the more he tried to ignore it, the more pressing it became. He looked around the studio, the bedroom, the living room, and even the bathrooms. Yet no source could be found. He looked around the whole house, except one place. He hadn't entered that one in 5 years. He avoided walking past it. He dreaded the fact that it existed and would have preferred to forget it. Whenever he got close to it, the oaky smell of the house would disappear and the stench of the morgue would take its place. But that night, between the unbearable smell and the incessant noise, the latter was heavier to bear. So, under the will of a body trying to reclaim its comfort, Arthur headed toward his son's room. The closer he got, the clearer the voice became. The whispers had nothing human-like about them, as if they were made of the sounds of whirling winds, cracking twigs, and broken leaves. Once he was in front of the door, he heard, in the same alien voice, "Come in." He held the doorknob for a moment and felt its coldness dissipate under the warmth of his palm. The insistence of the voice was stopped with the noise of the poorly oiled doorknob being turned. The room was still as he remembered it, or at least what was left of his memory of it. The green walls, the posters, the toys, everything in the room brought Arthur into a past he so desired to relive. He passed his hands across the desk he had once built for his son, but only the dust remained. As he lay on the bed, he felt something hard under the pillow. It was wrapped in gift paper with the words, "For Dad," written on it. With tears running down his face, he peeled off the paper. His son had left him a painting of a pond covered with lotuses. As he looked into it, contemplating every brush stroke made by the tender hands of his lost son, the rancid sweetness of the morgue that had occupied his body for 5 years slowly turned into the floral freshness of a park where nothing bad could ever happen. The end.